Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Michael NETTO from MDF Commerce to the pod. Welcome, Michael.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so cool to have you along for the ride today. We were talking a little bit off air just for 10 minutes and getting the backstory of each other and how we came to be here. And you're a character, and I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your interesting story about how you even came to be in this world, this crazy, wonderful, fantastical world of e-commerce.
Wow. It takes me back, and I just had an aha moment. I go back to my business school. There was a moment in business school where I remember being in class and our prof was at the front. He's talking to us about EDI. And think about this. I'm going back to probably 1991, 92, somewhere in there.
Wow.
And he's talking about EDI, electronic data interchange, and how companies should transfer information through what was then the beginning of the internet, probably off of a modem.
Yes.
But that's where it started. It was in that moment. That's where I first learned about what would become e-commerce.
Wow. And we're of a similar vintage. And the great thing I think about our vintage is we were in that straddle portion of history where we grew up without the internet, in where the internet hadn't been invented yet. We saw the coming of the internet. Then we saw the mainstreaming of the internet. Then we saw the mainlining of the internet. We're in that real straddle generation where we saw the entire landscape of society and culture and move away from primarily face-to-face interaction to being mediated by this thing we call the internet, the interwebs.
And now, wouldn't it be nice to go back to the face-to-face? Wouldn't it be nice sometimes?
It's funny you mentioned that, because this year I'm going to be at more conferences this year, in-person conferences, than I have in the last few years combined. And I think in the lead up to COVID, it was really interesting because I was getting a little bit worn out with the conference circuit and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh God, okay, I got to go to this conference. I got to get on a plane. Right. I got to travel, all this sort of stuff. I got to go and meet clients and all that sort of stuff. But I tell you, if I learned anything through COVID, it was like just how much my personality thrives on physical human interaction and energy, and how much I missed that after 3 years of not having it. It was like I was having freaking withdrawals of in-person activities and events. And man, I tell you, this year I'm going to be at a ton of events, and I'm seriously looking forward to it.
This whole work from home culture, great, but it's not great.
Still, the funny thing is, despite what Zuck says and everything else, they still just cannot replicate, even with VR and everything else, they can't replicate human energy being in the same space
of course not.
With someone.
Right. Imagine if you and I were sitting across a table right now. Yes. Even this dynamic, as good as it is, would be fundamentally different and more powerful.
Couldn't agree more. And we'd probably be holding at least for me, I'd probably be having a bourbon handy at that point. So we'd be sharing a quiet little tipple. But listen, cool history, cool background. And then how did you come to be involved with MDF? How did you come, because you've been there just over a year.
Yeah.
How did you come to be involved with MDF?
I guess I'll go back a bit. So graduated in business school, took that one course. I ended up graduating in business school with major in IT, and immediately fell into the technology world and have never looked back. I've always been on the business side with tech in my heart, and I can speak the language of tech. And that's why I stay in it. It's just fun. And I've seen it evolve. Going back to having an email address, and I wasn't able to do anything with the email address because nobody else I knew had an email address. So working through tech all the way back then to now, and I've ended up working in project management. I was always on the services side with companies like IBM and Xerox, and learning really great best of world practices and tools and here's how to do things. And a couple of years ago, got laid off, as many of us do.
Yes.
Landed back in management consulting. So I said, let me just consult. And I started consulting with MDF. At some point, they had a need and they went, Michael, we have an offer for you. And I dove right in. I loved the people. I loved what they were doing. I love e-commerce. And they said, why not? Let's do this. And it's been about a year, and it's been fascinating.
Wow.
It's really been fascinating.
I love it. And I, in all transparency, never used MDF before. I've never worked with you before or the technology before. So why don't you tell us, I have to go with what's on the tin
Right.
here, offer e-commerce solutions, offer e-procurement solutions, and offer e-marketplace solutions. But within the, I guess, the bucket of e-commerce, you've got two separate e-commerce platforms, as
Right.
I understand it, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong.
You got it.
One is effectively a front end for ERPs. So specifically Microsoft Dynamics and SAP Business One. So we can think of you almost like an equivalent that somebody may have heard of would be like a Sana Commerce or something like
Right.
that, or a Corvist or something like that plugs into a ERP backend as its single source of truth of data. And then you effectively provide the headless front end or the commerce front end to those platforms. And then you've got more of a standalone commerce platform called Orchestra with a K that is more independent of the ERP backend. And then I'm guessing that when you say e-procurement solutions, I'm guessing you've got a punch out solution and then a marketplace module as well. So why don't you
Right.
walk us through to make sure my understanding of your platform is accurate?
So well done. That was really well done. So I'll focus in specifically on the K-ecommerce piece, which is the business to business, flexible, scalable e-commerce solution that we have that supports what I'll say modern business, modern enterprise selling. So we have a solution that was built years ago that's native that natively supports all these ERPs. Not all the ERPs, the ones that Dynamics, SAP, and Acumatica and whatnot. And we have our own, again, homegrown payment processor that we actually throw in either within the ERP or sitting on top of our solution. So we have different flavors depending on what our customers need. But it really is, think of it as a website and it just integrates into ERP. So what people are seeing is the inventory within the ERP.
And so does it have this K-commerce engine, does it have its own catalog engine that's synced via API with the ERP, or is it is just showing the product data coming out of the ERP, including the descriptions and the images and everything else?
So there's a sync process that happens. And we can have the sync process go as often or as not as often as we want it to, depending on the client requirements, how dynamic is their data. And so we query the ERP and their catalogs, and they send over the data. We capture it we map it over into our system. And then what the customer is seeing is, I would say, almost real-time data, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I see on the website, it says K-ecommerce has been around since 1999. So
Yes.
This is not your first rodeo as a business, and it's certainly not your first rodeo as a commerce specialist. But would you say that for the K-ecommerce platform, that like 95% of your customers for that technology would be manufacturers and distributors? Because it sounds like, obviously, in D2C and B2C, they don't necessarily always have an ERP in the back end. They'll maybe have just an accounting system,
Correct.
a QuickBooks or a Xero or something like that. And then they'll have a separate standalone PIM and they'll have different technologies in the stack, but they won't always have an ERP. Whereas B2B's 99% of the time, they've got an ERP. It's the beating heart of these manufacturing and distribution businesses.
You've got it. So I'm not quite sure for it 99%, but I would say the vast majority of the businesses that we deal with that leverage K-ecommerce have ERPs. There are a couple of standouts who actually go standalone for whatever reasons they want to, or they're on their way towards ERP, and they're saying, let's take some baby steps. But you're right. It's full-fledged people with ERP systems who want integration, who want to make things so much more efficient, click and have the thing flow through the entire system.
Love it. And I'm guessing that also leads me to understanding why you have a punch-out solution or an e-procurement solution, because if the vast majority of your K-ecommerce customers are manufacturers and distributors, they need a punch-out solution to surface their catalog to their customers.
Right.
And on the procurement side, because they want to automate their buyers want to automate the procurement process, and they need to be able to pull down the catalog from K-ecommerce via punch-out so that they can then push the POs back up to the supplier.
Yep.
And Do you think of your marketplace module as a complete standalone solution independent of Orchestra and K-ecommerce?
It really is. So all three of them are standalone.
Okay.
And I specifically focus on the K-ecommerce piece of it.
Okay.
That's
Interesting.
my client base. That's where we push our product, and that's what we're interested in specifically.
Makes sense. And what do you think makes you guys stand out? What's interesting is I've been in e-commerce for 25 plus years now, and I've seen the steady takeover of B2C and D2C by two players. That's WooCommerce and Shopify,
Right.
right? It would be where most businesses would start. And I would say now more than ever before Shopify, because of the ecosystem they've got behind them, the 12,000 apps they've got in their ecosystem, et cetera. So that war has largely been won, I think. In the B2B e-commerce world, not so yet. There's
No.
probably 30 major B2B focused or solely B2B e-commerce platforms out there. And I don't think that's going to remain the case over the next 5 years. I think there's going to be massive consolidation in the space.
Right.
I think we're going to be left ultimately with probably 5-6 major B2B e-commerce platform players, combined with maybe 5 or 6 more vertical specific B2B e-commerce platform players like Equip 360 for heavy equipment and things like that. I've seen this consolidation story play out before in multiple phases of history, right?
Of course,
And
regardless of vertical.
so how do you think, if this eventuates the way that I think it might over the next 5 years, where do you guys think you really strongly differentiate versus some of the other major B2B e-commerce players in the market?
So a couple of things. We've been around since 99.
Yes.
We have had so many customers. Like, one of the things customers are always telling us is, what I'm asking you to do isn't unique. In their minds, they all think they're not unique, which is really weird because most people want to believe, hey, I'm unique, my business is unique. But they all come to us and say, we're not unique. Give me a one-size solution that fits all. And going back to the Shopifys of the world and all the competition, a lot of them push for that, and they might have integrations, but you can't forget the clients, although they believe they're not unique, they are. They really are. So you have to have a deep knowledge and a deep understanding of supply chain, of distribution, and how these ERPs work. So what you're doing is you're not just selling a product to a potential client, you're consulting with them. And you're having discussions with them about what they truly need. It goes back to business requirements and how to elicit things that they don't even know that they need to have.
Yes.
So it's about those discussions, and our team excels in that. How do we differentiate? I would say it's the ability to sit down with customers who don't necessarily have all the pieces put together, because this is complex. When we think of e-commerce, I'd love to somehow coin the term. The E should be enterprise. It's enterprise commerce, not just simply e-commerce.
Yes,
And when
totally.
you're looking at enterprise commerce, it's not easy. It's not just buy this, install it, and it's going to work off the bat. It's none of that. So unless you have a deep understanding and appreciation for this is complicated, and you walk the client along this journey of, this isn't going to necessarily be easy. It's going to take time, but the benefits, the rewards are wow. Just the ROI is incredible. And I think a lot of the competition hasn't figured that piece out yet of, you've got to take the client by the hand and walk in their shoes, because they are unique. They don't want to be unique. They think their workflow is the same workflow as everybody else, but it's not. The way they handle invoicing, the way they handle catalogs, and it's all unique.
It is very unique. So when you say that, do you mean that, hey, we don't do delivery of our platform through partners? We're not only the software vendor, but we're also the agency partner that's going to do this implementation for you. So you do the implementations as well as provide the software. Is that how it works? Would people engage with you?
That's how it works today. And that's how it's always worked here today. So we contract out with our clients, and then we have a professional services team and the implementation arm with project managers and custom web teams who come in. We have business analysts who sit with the client, figure out what they need, implement, customize, bring the data over, and go live. Having said that, we are looking at partnering at channel partners and such, and we're wondering, is this an opportunity for us to reach deeper into the market, partner with people who know what they're doing, trusted, of course, and work with them on implementations? We're not there yet. Definitely thinking about it though. Definitely.
Makes sense. I think it becomes really hard. There's very few product companies, and obviously I've never worked with you, so I can't say yes or no for you guys. But I think it's very difficult for product companies to also do really good professional and managed services. I think it's just hard because you got to wear multiple hats, right? You got to
Agreed.
wear the product, you got to wear the product hat, and then you also have to wear the services hat, and that's really hard. And even companies as big and vaunted as NetSuite, in my experience, really struggle to do both. Fantastic product. I love the NetSuite platform, but in terms of professional and managed services, not so much. And I've had exposure to them before. So I would always, when I recommend, because sometimes I'll go in and I'll scope an ERP solution in for a client, and sometimes the recommendation is a NetSuite, but I would never ever recommend that they get implemented by NetSuite. That I know some excellent, excellent channel partners of NetSuite who know more about the holistic product of NetSuite than even NetSuite does themselves across their entire platform. So it's interesting when your bread and butter is professional services. Sometimes that makes that. Sometimes it's easier to wear one hat than two or three. Right?
Correct. You really nailed that one. When I look at what we do well and how and what our product team does well, our product team really does product well. Okay. They don't understand services, and our services team does services really well, and they didn't have a really good understanding of product. And something that we've been doing over the past year is getting them to share their thoughts on the ecosystems and hey, services really need this. Clients are really like this, and then the product side, you know what, products really work well this way. And we're starting to get that teaming. I wouldn't even saying starting to. We've got that teaming going now. And the whole synergy, right? 1 + 1 is not equal to 2. It's way more than 2. And you're right. I think it's been one of the biggest challenges. But if you get the right conversations going and the right trust built between the organizations, that's where the magic happens. And you can actually deliver an amazing product. You can build an amazing product and you can deliver that amazing product with a really good customer journey and get them happy if both organizations understand each other. And
Yes.
you're right, most don't.
It's just hard. I think it's just hard. It's hard. No matter what your intent is internally, it's hard. It is hard to wear those multiple hats. But for you guys, if you were to look out across the majority of your K-ecommerce client base, are there specific verticals or areas or categories or because what I find in my consulting work today is that there's very few just pure distributors or pure manufacturers. Nowadays, they're almost always a little bit of both. So if you're a distributor, you oftentimes are going to be having some of your own branded products. You're going to have maybe 10, 20, 30% of your catalog you manufacture, 60, 70% of your catalog that you're a distributor for, because more than ever before, distributors nowadays, they don't want to sell SKUs, they want to sell solutions. So they want to sell the whole kit and caboodle. If I manufacture pumps, for example, I don't want to just sell pumps. I want to sell all the plumbing. I want to sell the plumbing and the piping. I want to sell the valves. I want to sell an entire solution into, say, food service or medical or whatever it is. So I want to sell an entire packaged solution into the market so that what I offer is differentiated, it's unique, and I can wrap services. Maybe I wrap field services around that. Maybe I wrap warranty services around that. Maybe I wrap project management installation services around that. Maybe I wrap a whole bunch of services around the products that I sell. And therefore, I guess what I'm saying is that very few B2Bs today are simple in the way that they operate.
Right.
Very few just get products from a manufacturer, warehouse it somewhere, and then sell it and ship it out. That's it in cartons, pallets, and containers. B2B today is more complex than I've ever seen it. And I've been exposed to B2Bs for 20 plus years. And so the reality is that the game has changed and the buying demographic has changed, meaning that Forrester came out with a report at the end of 2024 that showed that 71% of B2B buyers in the United States today are millennials and Gen Z. So the buying demographic has changed, and therefore their expectations around the seamlessness of the buying process has changed. Plus, their business model has changed. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this whole wholesale thing these days.
To raise a really interesting point, frictionless. Their expectation of frictionless, and as you said, we are of the same. What was the
Vintage?
Vintage.
like a fine wine, right?
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Their expectation of frictionless is very different from ours, right? So we were used to seeing things a bit broken, a little bumpy, and we'd be like, "Ah, that's cool." If I go pick up my Starbucks and it's made a bit wrong, I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." But their expectation is very different, and they're looking for that, almost for that experience where they're just like in flow, and they're like, "Oh, look at this great." I'm like, "It really? It's really what they want?" And so we now have to step back and go, how do we serve that up in a way that they're going to be happy? And it really is about the frictionless piece where they looked at so what we're doing really is I don't know if this is a word, we're consumerizing B2B e-commerce as B2C e-commerce, as Shopify did. So they want that same look and feel and taste of Shopify. It's easy, it's fast, everything works. But this is not B2C, it's B2B. So you're right. Those manufacturers and distributors, they're a lot more complex than they've ever been. A lot of them are actually, so even if they're selling a pen, they're now really an IT company because all these companies are now really IT companies. It's all about data. And when you get into these more complex manufacturers and distributors today who are successful and who have diversified their data needs and their data, I'll call it, their complexified data sitting on top with ERPs, and they have disparate systems that all have to speak together. Now you throw on an e-commerce system on top of it that's got to integrate. It's got to be seamless. It's got to be frictionless. It's difficult for the buyers. It's difficult for the manufacturer. It's difficult for everybody. And I think we all have to understand the complexity, the difficulty. It's doable, and we've shown it's doable. But you can't just say, take the software, install it, and you're done. Nobody's expecting that anymore.
And what happens if you encounter a customer for the very first time and they've got, say, a legacy ERP system, the product data is not that great, the customer data is not that great, they've got one price list per customer because it's grown organically.
Right.
They've got a catalog. Modern distributors will have 500,000 to 5 million SKUs. So we're talking very large scale catalogs, very complex catalogs. They might have an ERP, but they probably don't have a PIM. Many of them don't have a PIM yet. So they don't have the rich data around their products yet that are really needed to create a great front-end customer experience through a B2B portal of some description. How do you help them when they come to you and they say, "Hey, look, we're ready to make this investment. We've got the mandate from the board. We need to create a portal," right? And then you get in there and you discover, hey, this data is not really even ready for e-commerce yet. How do you help them? Do you provide a PIM module? Do you provide them with data structure consulting? Do you connect them with, say, a data X service for product enrichment or a data supplier like a DDS Solutions? Or how do you engage with merchants who think they're ready for e-commerce, but they're not yet ready from a back-end perspective?
So we're, at the end of the day, you're just honest with them. So
yes.
As you start the conversation and you start having data conversations and you're looking at the data that they don't have, or the data that's just kind of ugly data, those conversations just have to happen. And you explain to them why. It depends who you're dealing with at the company. And you have the tech people, you have procurement people, you have sales, you just have all kinds of people. And you just have to find the right people within the organization to have that conversation with. And explain to them, sure, and usually if it's somebody in tech, if it's somebody in data, they'll understand it right away. Yeah. And they kind of understand that it's the ERP system that's going to have the clean data. Our system is not going to have clean data if your system doesn't have clean data.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right. And you can't build your good data in our system because then your ERP system is still, right? Even though there's integration, ours is not where you should be building it. So it's consulting. It really is consulting, saying, here are the steps that you need to take on your side. We'll help you with it. Do we partner with? No, we don't. That's not the market that we're in, but we'll coach them. We'll know where to go. As we're building out our channel partnerships, that will change. But for now, we go back to their IT and their data people and saying, here's what. Now, they usually already know that. So then how do we get them to move forward? And it really is through that incremental delivery. Let's give them little pieces that will work for them. Let's give them a website where they can see what that data is going to look like. It won't be transactional. Right? So just little things to whet their appetite. They start to understand the systems. They start to understand why the bad data in their ERP system needs to be cleaned up. Look what it looks like on the front end, and look at how constrained you are on the front end.
Yeah, man, the data is it's been talked about for decades, but it really is. E-commerce is where the rubber meets the road with bad data. Because all of a sudden, especially for manufacturers and distributors, their sales teams have often covered up for bad data for a very long time. And you have these sales reps that have been working in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes. They know exactly which printed catalog to go and get a piece of information from.
Right.
They know exactly where on the network drive to go and get this PDF of an MSDS. They know exactly where to go inside the business to get this piece of information, then pull it all together, attach it to an email, and send it off to their customer. And so they've papered over this bad data problem for a really long time with human beings. And so now all of a sudden, the dirty laundry gets aired the moment that you try to connect this bad data or no data in some instances,
right,
where they've got spreadsheets of data on network drives and on sales reps' desktops and everywhere else, but it's not in the ERP in a meaningful way, apart from maybe in the ERP, oftentimes when I go in and I start consulting and I ask them to give me an extract, a sample of 20 products from their ERP, oftentimes the only thing I get is a name, a SKU, maybe a 1-sentence short description, maybe price and inventory. Those are like the things that I will get out of the ERP. And I'm like, okay, do you not have any taxonomy data in here at all?
Oh, gosh, no,
right? And so it's a really interesting, I often say that my job as a consultant is to be the one person maybe ever in your life that has told you that your baby is ugly. That's my job, because people inside the business aren't going to say that because they don't want to lose their job.
Of course not. We can't.
They can't because their job's at risk. Then I'd love to get your thoughts on this. The next area of pushback that I often get when I go in and they go, "Oh, you're the devil," is from the sales team, right? Because the sales team, when I first get there, they're like, "Oh, you're the guy that's going to replace me with a robot. Oh, you're the guy that's going to replace me with the computer. Oh, you're the guy that's going to replace me and pick my pocket of commissions and replace me with the machine, aren't you?" And I'm like, actually, no, I'm the guy that's going to give you superpowers, and I'm the guy that's going to take away all the things about your job that you hate. I don't know a salesperson alive that likes admin, but 20 to 60% of their job is admin. So they take the orders from the customer and they manually key it into an ERP system for processing.
Yeah, maybe they want to do that, right?
No sales rep likes that. So I'm like, no, I'm actually probably your biggest advocate in this world, but I want to give you superpowers so that you can go and knock on more doors, you can close more deals, you can make more money, and you have more free time to go and schmooze and do the relationship building that you're best at. So help me help you. The famous Jerry Maguire line, help me help you. So are these some of the kinds of conversations you're often having with your customers too?
It absolutely is. And a lot of people that we speak to, there's that, I guess, hesitation of this is when we're going to cut jobs or we lose jobs. And we talk to them about, no, it just means that you're reallocating where your resources go. The same job, and you're providing a higher value service to your organization, and your organization can provide higher value services to your internal or external clients as well. You're going to be having more fun. You won't be frustrated with the things that you have to do because of bad data, right? Rather than banging your head against the table every day, all of a sudden the things are flowing. And flow is one of my favorite words, right? When we're in flow, when things are just moving the way it's supposed to move, it's the most beautiful thing. And you're sitting there and you're like, why can't life just be like this all the time? And that's what we have to convince our customers of, is no, these things aren't these bad machines that are going to, the AI that's going to destroy everything and roll out of a job. No, it's making things better for you. And it really is. It really is. It's not hard to convince people of that, though. I don't think so. Once you start to show them, here's what you'll be doing instead,
it becomes an easier conversation, especially when they stop perceiving you as a threat and start seeing you as an ally of theirs.
Yeah.
Look, I've done sales all my life in one way or shape or form. I've done sales. Even as a solution architect, you're selling your idea to the customer. You're selling your vision of the world to the customer. I've been involved in sales my entire life in one way, shape, or form. Just the title might look different. That's as someone who sits in the middle, and most of my role is acting as a translator, converting business requirements and needs into a technical solution, and vice versa, explaining the technical solution in such a way that the business understands what that actually means and the benefits to the business as a result. And so most of my jobs is being an advocate and a translator. And you said something very interesting in the beginning, which is that you said that when you go in and your team goes in and your BAs go in, it's not just documenting requirements, because many times they don't know what their requirements are. It's helping them even identify their requirements when they don't even know how to necessarily articulate that to you.
Right. They may not know what that whole Quadra thing, I think was it Rumsfeld or the unknown unknowns? Like they don't know what they know.
Yes.
And that's our jobs as consultants, as people
Yes.
who are in technology, who get the stuff. It's up to us to sit people down and walk them through it and bring them to the light, if you will, and get them go. And here's a word I'll use. You, in our conversation, have said the same word over and over. Right? You probably haven't realized it because it's so like it's just part of who you are. Solution. You keep using the word solution. It's one of the words I use. We provide solutions, which means there's a problem. There's an underlying problem that we're trying to solve, and they don't necessarily know what their problem is. It's the same thing like even with support tickets that we get. People go, oh, here's the problem. I'm like, really? Is that the problem? Have you done the 5 levels of why? Have you gone through and say, what is the real problem you're trying to solve? And if we do that with our customers, we get to their underlying problem. What are they really trying to solve? And that's when people like what you're saying. You come up with a solution that says, here it is. And in doing that, again, that's also where the magic happens. And we start going, oh, okay, we've got this. Here's how we can make your life way better. Make all that pain go away. Frictionless, right?
And where are you guys finding that there are the biggest, are there categories or verticals that you say, okay, we win in automotive, or we win in a wholesale electrical or HVAC or whatever, building supplies or whatever it might be? Are there specific verticals that you see the same common challenges over and over again? And hey, we've solved this for this vertical really well in the past, and we know what this looks like. So therefore, we can almost help you shortcut from where you are today to where you want to get to, because we have this really deep and broad experience within exactly what you do.
That's a tough one to answer. So here's how I'll try to answer that. We have friends in many verticals, too many to list. So we support a bunch of verticals. What we see is it's the same problems, it's the same data problems. It's the same data problems, and I would call it structured data, right? The whole concept of it in the ERP, having categories or catalogs. And when people start building data at the very beginning, when somebody's putting something into an Excel file, because that's where it all starts, and then they merge 2 Excel files, and then they merge a 3rd Excel file, and then all of a sudden they bring that into an ERP, it's not structured. Regardless of the vertical, the problem that we see carries across verticals. It goes back to that structured data. Forget clean data, structured data, right?
Yes, consistently structured data.
Forget that. That's what I see. And when you bring the customers to a realization that structured data is important, and here's the stuff that they need to go fix, and again, it's regardless of vertical, it's always the same thing. We're human beings with the same problems. And going back to they think they're not unique. They are unique in the way they want to, their workflows work, but we've all got the same data problems. This is very much as a data discussion that we're having today.
And how do you think AI is a buzzword? I get it. What some of the things I've seen emerging over the last 6 months have been pretty exciting, particularly to me as a consultant. There's platforms like Motivate. There's other B2B e-commerce platforms that have started to integrate multimodal AI into their platform so that they can receive orders via email or WhatsApp or Slack or whatever. And they can, because now multimodal AI can parse any format of data and any file type, whether it's an Excel or a PO sent via PDF or a quote request sent by a PDF or whatever it is. Now with multimodal AI, we can pick that up and we can map that into our commerce systems in a very natural way. That means that even if our customers don't log into our new shiny new portal to do their transaction, we can, regardless of how they choose to interact with us, we now can get those orders and quote requests and inventory requests and pricing requests and all that stuff. We can get that into our commerce platform in a meaningful way today. Sure, in the past, you might be able to do OCR and a certain amount of data mapping via iPaaS middleware and the like, but multimodal AI has definitely leveled up the game of being able to parse these really ugly and multivariate format data coming in and structuring it in a meaningful way for the commerce engine. How do you guys think about that?
I'm actually looking for the right words. I'm kind of looking at it from a different perspective. I'm not looking at it from the old OCR days. How do we bring this into the system? I'm looking at AI, and again, not chatbots,
Yes.
not any of that stuff, not what I call the cool marketing stuff that gets people excited, but how do we use AI in our systems so that our customers, those manufacturers and distributors, can do something as simple as predictive ordering. Our systems, whether it's an ERP or whether it's an e-commerce engine, should be giving our customers the ability to say, hey, you know what? This specific customer or these portfolio of this type of customer, they typically do this. Maybe you should be pushing this. Maybe you should be going out and getting quotes on this stuff from your vendors, from your suppliers. Like, just not just a part of it, not just the e-com piece, not just the ERP piece, but the entire ERP process should have AI built into it so that you're enabling better decision making. Of course, the AI will make the decision for you, but at least it'll ask you to approve it if it passes a certain threshold. But that's where I see AI coming into play in all of these systems, in e-commerce, telling the customer what they want before they even, again, know that they want it. So when you have a customer coming to your site, they don't know what they want, but AI figured out that this customer needs this at this price, at this volume. That's where I think AI needs to be leveraged. We're not there yet. I think the first person to get there is, we talked about consolidation. We talked about 5 or 6 players in the market. Whoever gets there will reap the rewards.
To the victor goes the spoils, right?
Right.
And I think, to your point, I think AI and demand planning, AI and auto replenishment, but also what I'm seeing more of is a willingness for the entire B2B supply chain to share data with each other.
Yes.
All the way across the supply chain. And what I mean by that is, okay, I'm a distributor that sits in the middle. I got 100 customers, whatever it is, right? And maybe they're business customers that consume my product in their business, or they resell those products on into the market,
Right.
whatever. And I, as the buyer in that scenario, I usually, in my ERP or in my e-procurement system, I've probably got min maxes in there. I've probably got replenishment levels and everything else, right? And then I've also got my actual current inventory level in there.
Right.
I'm seeing a willingness on the buy side to share that data with the distributor or the supplier or the manufacturer and say, look, okay, I'm going to share my min-max levels with you, and then I'm going to also share my current inventory levels with you. And when I hit down to this certain threshold, I want you to just auto-replenish me up to the max level, and I just want you to ship that out and aggregate all those requests over a week period, say, and then I want you to ship everything out on a Friday to replenish me. And that way, I don't even have to set up the PO in my e-procurement system. It all just happens based on a dynamic PO scenario. And that level of data sharing wasn't really that common pre-COVID in my experience. Everybody would they clung onto their data like it was some proprietary magical thing that gave them a differentiation in the market. But because of the supply chain disruptions, the one green shoot that came out of the supply chain disruptions was a willingness to share supply chain data cross supply chain in ways that I'm not sure that would have ever happened if COVID didn't happen. Are you seeing something similar?
So I've got two comments. The first was, we were talking about, I was on a call with a client yesterday, and we're going through her system, and we went, so for System Live, we went through her system, we started ordering stuff, and of course, her products are there, the pieces that are synced. So she sees her products, and she's entering inventory numbers. Now she knows what her inventory is. She's entering her inventory numbers and through APIs, because that part is not synced, that part is live, right? Goes in, fetches the inventory number, comes back and says, oh, you're short 300 of these. And it will tell the salesperson entering that at her company, you need to now go run a PO. It's not automating it, but they're getting a pop saying you need to go do this thing. So it's not there yet. So that was the first piece of our discussion. The second thing you said, which is interesting, is you're right. Since COVID, the sharing of information is happening more. I teach management, I teach business operations at a local university. And I borrowed this game that comes from another teacher in some American university. And what you do is you sit 8 people around a table, and each one of them has a role in the supply chain. So one is the customer who says, I want to buy 5 tomatoes. And the tomato person, and he hands a post note saying, I want to buy 5. And that person hands it over to somebody else, and it goes around the table, and it comes all the way back. And it's a game of how much inventory are you holding. It's too much inventory, you have inventory holding costs, and no inventory, you've just lost a sale. And in that game, the students begin to realize you have to share information, not just request inventory. You've got to share information, not with just that one person, with the 8 people at the table. So there has to be this trust that's built. And once that trust is built, guess who wins? All 8 people.
Everybody.
Everybody wins. And we're seeing it more and more. Information sharing. How AI is going to play into that? Maybe you can tell me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because I tell you, AI, I've had a couple of different distributed order management platforms on the podcast and a few other players in the sort of supply chain ecosystem for commerce. And they are doing, so the biggest global companies, the likes of the Coca-Colas of the world, et cetera, they're already starting to use AI across their supply chain to predict. So they know because of COVID that just-on-time manufacturing is not a thing. Just-on-time fulfillment is not a thing. Breaks down. The moment you have any disruption to the supply chain, it breaks down, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to go back to the bad old days of just-in-time, but they also don't want to be holding a whole bunch of inventory that isn't moving. So they want to strike a happy balance between too much product and not enough product. And more importantly, the right product in the right location at the right time. That's the more important thing.
Right.
And one of the things that the biggest companies in the world are doing, they are taking information from the supply chain and all the way down to the individual retailer level in many instances, so that they can even do things as simple as doing proper route planning for trucks doing delivery on their routes, right? To make sure that they have enough product on board for those specific locations that they need to get product to. And to make the route planning more efficient along the way. I don't need to go to this one because they've got enough product to get them through the next 3 days. So I don't even need to stop there. I just know. Right. And so I think this AI thing is really valuable in scenarios like that, where you plug in a bunch of data, you tell it the outcome that you want, and based on historical outcomes of specific scenarios, it goes, cool, great. You've told me what the outcome needs to be. I'm telling you what you need to do to make it happen.
Help me understand this.
Yes.
Great.
So you go.
All right. Starbucks, 30,000 stores around the world.
Wow.
The store managers sit there and place an order online every week of, I need this stock, I need this inventory coming in this week for the coming week. And every week they're wrong.
How is that possible?
That's what I don't get. And so my kids were baristas and I would watch this, play it week after week, year after year. And I was like, Starbucks, multi-billion-dollar corporation, how can they be getting this wrong? Why is this so complicated or complex? Bad data, no AI, no prediction algorithms. So I just use that as a simple example of how challenging the business world is, how challenging e-commerce is, and how much in-depth you have to be with all the different elements of how a company runs supply chain, distribution, manufacturing, sales. And then you have to get the tech people in because they understand data. And stuff it's not easy. We can do it. We know how to do it. And you can get it done. And when it happens, it's magic. But I just think that a lot of people haven't figured out that just yet. And Starbucks has to figure it out soon enough.
The new CEO, I think he's got a big incentive to figure it out. So let's see how that goes. And Chipotle and all the majors in this space have a big incentive to get this right. Listen, fantastic conversation, super fascinating, and I love your take on things. You've got a really unique sort of thought process around some of this stuff that I really love. What's next for you guys? Is there anything you don't do today that either your customers are asking for and you don't do yet, but you will do in the next 6, 12, 18 months? Or are there any gaps in the market that you look at and you say, we don't do this today, but we think this is a big opportunity or will be a big opportunity, so we're going to skate to where the puck is going, not where the puck is now. What is on your radar from a product development perspective?
I'll give you a couple of things that are what I'd say are innocuous to share with you, right? So we're looking at our quotes process. Like, how can we improve the quotes process within e-commerce? So we're bringing in enhancements in our product for that. SSO, OpenID. Again, simple things that maybe we're even behind on, and we're saying, let's bring these in. Enhancements to payment gateway. So we're doing, that's some of just the housekeeping, keep the lights on kind of stuff. We are in roadmap planning right now, and we're actually running a vision workshop in about, we're supposed to be next week. I think it's going to be in 3 weeks, where we're looking at what's the vision for K-ecommerce 3 to 5 years. What's the vision of the product? Forget K-ecommerce, because the organization and the product are two different things. And we're going through workshopping of where do we want this product to be at. It is exactly what you're talking about. So I can't share with you what our vision is because there's competitive advantages in not sharing that. But there's so much, Jason, there's so much opportunity out there. Going back to Starbucks, as the store manager is still ordering their product online. Most B2Bs have so many more things they can do, and they want us to implement for them, and things they don't know what they don't know. There's a ton of stuff that we can bring to the market, which is a fun roadmap. Well, we're roadmapping it.
And how do you guys make your money? Are you a multi-tenant SaaS platform? You on-prem technology? How do you deliver yourself?
Both. We're less and less on-prem, more and more multi-tenant SaaS. Mm-hmm. We are monthly. I won't call it subscription based, but monthly revenue based. We're looking at subscription possibilities. We're looking at, do we look at a percentage of overall sales? So there's different models that we can use. We're actually, again, reevaluating all of that right now. So that's where we make our money. We're trying to figure out what's the best way, what's going to work best for the customer as they're onboarding, especially when they have lower volume, lower revenue. But then they come on, we help them with e-commerce, but then as they grow, we grow. So it's one of those win-win things that everybody talks about, but it's a real win.
Awesome. Listen, this has been fascinating. I've learned more about MDF than I've ever known before in my life. So I appreciate you enlightening me along the way. Now's where I get the extreme pleasure of being able to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you and let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. I'm open. I'm an open book. Mr. Michael NETTO from MDF Commerce. What is your question for me today?
I love it, Jason. What is the one thing that you would want to change? I'm not talking about the software side of e-commerce. What's the biggest problem e-commerce is having today that people like you and I and our colleagues in the e-commerce space have to get behind and fix? I know that's a loaded question, but go for it.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. It's really, I hate to say this, but it's our demo that is creating the resistance, meaning people our age that are in most cases creating the resistance to change inside these businesses. And I can say that because I'm in that demo of people that are oftentimes in leadership positions of these businesses. And this mindset of this is the way we've always done it. If it ain't broke, why fix it? That there's so much of that in the industry still, and I'm fighting against that so hard. I'm putting out content daily, and there are colleagues of mine in the B2B EA that are putting out content daily, trying to educate and inspire and create an environment where business leaders, they go from being terrified of the technology and how it is going to disrupt their business to say, look, we can either be disrupted from without or from within. It's going to happen one way or another. Let's disrupt from within instead. Let's question everything across how we do everything. And that is slowly starting to happen by attrition anyway, because the older generation is aging out, they're retiring, whatever. Also, a lot of these manufacturers and distributors, they're family-run businesses, and there's 50, 75, 100-year-old businesses where the children and grandchildren of the founders are now starting to take over leadership positions in these businesses, and it's getting easier to have those discussions in those scenarios, because those kids are digital natives themselves. And they look across these family-owned businesses and they go, oh my God, I can't believe we still do things this way. This is insane. We can't continue to do these things this way. So it's external competitive pressure combined with internal pressure to modernize that is creating these massive opportunities. But there's still so much resistance. I can name 5 different scenarios in the last 6 months where an elderly founder of a distribution company pulled the pin on a digital transformation project because they just couldn't connect the dots on the value. They couldn't,
Right.
because the thing is, they were only looking at it through the lens of value for them in the business, not the lens of value for their customers. And when you are totally internally focused and you're not actually even having conversations with your customers and doing customer interviews and saying, what are the 3 things you love about doing business with us, but what are the 3 things you hate about doing business with us, that if we fix those 3 things, it would be a no-brainer for you to do all your business with us in this vertical. I think you have to create an environment with your customers, meaning my customers and your customers' customers, where they feel safe to be brutally honest about how they do business with you. Because if you ask the sales rep or the field salesperson or their account manager, whatever, to ask these questions, they got to go back and work with that person the next day. So oftentimes it's about having some neutral third party, me or you or somebody, anybody, have some sort of a consultant come in and ask those questions of your customers on your behalf, where there's nothing in danger. They don't feel threatened when they're being brutally honest about how they engage with you as a supplier. I think if you can create an environment like that's when you start seeing real honesty come out, and that's where that's the nuggets of golden opportunity. That's when they become apparent. That's what I see.
That insight is priceless. It really is. So thank you for sharing that.
So I really appreciate it. I thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.